here's the question, right? That
Sure.
There appears to be growing concern, right? That China, I mean, we're expecting China to behave rationally or to respond rationally. China could react instead by saying, just as what you do to someone who, when you push him against the wall, the person could give up or the person could punch back. Options get limited when there's perceived aggression. Now, how is this likely to affect China's stance in the region, in particular, with countries it has ongoing disputes with, like Taiwan, or for that matter, Japan, or even Philippines, where there are disputes going on? Is there a possibility that whatever is going on right now could push them to the brink and make them react strongly?
So far, if you notice the trend and pattern of Chinese behavior has been they would up the ante, right? And the situation is there's a security dilemma. What the other side perceives to be enhancing its deterrence is perceived by the Chinese to be drastically reducing its security, rightly or wrongly, right? And its response, a rational response would be, if you will, to maybe hold back and maybe at least have a reflexive, thinking about why states are pushing back against its assertive behavior. But its behavior has been actually take the opposite route so far, as it's basically to actually up the ante and to highlight its displeasure even more, at least visibly. And the way I look how the Chinese will respond is that they will do all things short of, it's a way of creeping aggression. It's not like they would, take very overt measures, sort of launching missiles and things like that. They won't. There's no reason for them to do that, right? But what they do is that they will have more military patrol. In the case of Taiwan, they've been sending more planes.
So what, posturing?
Yes, posturing, precisely.
Right. A quick question for Raja. How do you see India in this whole equation, especially in the Indo side of the Indo-Pacific region? That there seems to be a lot of emphasis. Center of gravity seems to be more the Pacific side. How do you see the Quad as well, India playing a role coordinating between Quad and the Quad and AUKUS in the interest of the Indo side of the Indo-Pacific?
No, just to start with the earlier question, I think India is a classic example of pushback. Earlier we were talking about pushback.
Right.
That India was sitting with the Chinese. India wanted to work with the Chinese to say, look, we'll build a multipolar world, which meant limiting American power. We said, we are Asian brothers, we have solidarity, we are, two great Asian nations. We should work to promote a different kind of world with the Russian brothers. Now, once China started pushing India, we've had conflicts in 2013, 2014, 2017, and 2020. The last crisis still going on. Now, after the last crisis, India has moved decisively towards the United States, shedding a whole lot of historic baggage that it is willing to work with the United States to deal with the Chinese challenge. So I think you push people, they do things which they would have not otherwise done. And I think Indian example stands out. Second, I think on the India and the Pacific, the reason for putting Indo into the Pacific is to broaden that framework in which we deal with the new challenge. Because otherwise, look, the US could have happily, it had Japan, Australia, or its not treaty allies. There is a historic relationship there. If they wanted to just deal with the Pacific, they would have just strengthened the two alliances and to keep push ahead. But I think the need for an Indian component to this larger strategy is where the need for larger mass, the need to have another major Asian power join a coalition that is willing to challenge Chinese unilateralism, it's a political benefit. Second, I think the Quad, as we have seen, has been to, while AUKUS is focused on military, the Quad has moved towards a more public goods agenda on vaccine production, on 5G, on a whole range of issues. if you recall, again, it was India that spoke up against 5G, against this Belt and Road Initiative. A large part of that criticism is now widely endorsed. So I think having India, which is historically a partner of China, an Asian nation that historically opposed American military presence in this part of the world, working with the US, produces a message, I think, fundamentally to the Chinese that, look, that the coalition is not about Asia versus the US. It's not Asia for Asians, that unless the Chinese change their behavior towards their Asian neighbors, many more Asian countries would want to align and get closer to the United States. So the principal benefit is political. Second, India has military capabilities. We can relieve the United States from some of its functions in the Indian Ocean, so that the US can do more in the Western Pacific. India, Australia can do more in Eastern Indian Ocean, where working around the Malacca Straits and the Sunda-Lombok Straits, they can generate some uncertainty for the Chinese. So there is a military benefit of cutting the burden, the security burdens, in a way that the US can take on far more heavier responsibilities, but India can take more responsibilities in the Indian Ocean.
Thank you, Raja. I have a final question for Manu. Manu, a quick comment on: are there any risks that you see that we all need to be aware of and be mindful of?
Risks arising from AUKUS?
Yes.
Well, I think it's a Chinese miscalculation that if the Chinese continue to believe that, the thing that the leaders have been repeating a lot, that the East is rising and the West is declining, if they misread that and they think that, well, they can do something along the lines of what Drew mentioned, take Kinman or whatever, and really change the whole picture, I mean, that would, I think, force the US to decide whether it needed to respond in kind, and you could very rapidly get an escalation.